people see Lincoln as anti-secession, but that is a bit misleading. He was never against secession in the abstract. It is hard for any American to be anti-secession in the abstract, given the fact that America was founded on secession. Lincoln was against unilateral secession, i.e. what the Confederacy did. Really, Lincoln had no problem, though, with lateral secession, though, where, say, Congress kicks a state out of the Union or an election is held, and it is agreed to let the states go.
That's a good point. Lincoln believed the Union was a voluntary agreement between the states and that they had the right to secede through a constitutional process, such as a convention of the states or a constitutional amendment. However, he opposed the Confederacy's unilateral secession, which he saw as an illegal and unconstitutional act that threatened the survival of the Union. He believed that the federal government had a duty to uphold the Constitution and preserve the Union, even if it meant using force to do so.
On Texas v. White enforces that as it only bans unilateral secession, not all forms of secession.
Yes, that's correct. The Supreme Court case Texas v. White, which was decided after the Civil War, held that unilateral secession was unconstitutional, but it did not rule out the possibility of secession under certain circumstances. The court held that the Union created by the Constitution was indissoluble, but also acknowledged that new states could be admitted to the Union, and the consent of the states would be required to alter the federal system.
Really, Texas v. White is a bit criticized as being a political activist case because there was no way they would rule in favor of secession after a war has been fought over it.
Texas v. White is a landmark case that affirmed the supremacy of the federal government over states and declared that unilateral secession was unconstitutional. The case arose after the Civil War when Texas claimed that it had seceded from the United States and joined the Confederacy, and that certain bonds it had issued in support of the Confederacy were invalid. The Supreme Court ruled that Texas had never actually seceded, and that its bonds were indeed valid. While some critics may argue that the court was being politically motivated in its decision, it is worth noting that the case was heard by a divided court, with several of the justices dissenting from the majority opinion. Additionally, the decision was consistent with the principles of the Constitution and the Supreme Court's role in interpreting it. Ultimately, the case reaffirmed the importance of the Union and the supremacy of the federal government, and helped to establish the legal framework for resolving disputes between states and the federal government